This is SBS News in Easy English. I'm Hannah Kwan. Prime Minister Scott Morrison is defending his government's engagement in the Pacific. The federal government has faced criticism from Labor for sending their Pacific minister to the Solomon Islands over a week ago before its deal with China was signed, instead of sending a senior representative of the government. Mr. Morrison says Australia has provided enough support and he's worried about the security of the Solomon Islands if China creates a military presence in the area.
What they're effectively saying is they're going to keep doing what we've been doing. There's one difference though. I sent in the AFP. The Labor Party wants to send in the ABC when it comes to their Pacific solution.
Meanwhile, Labor says it will boost Australia's official development assistance program by $525 million over the next 4 years to Pacific countries and Timor-Leste. Labor's spokeswoman for Foreign Affairs, Penny Wong, says the policy is focused on infrastructure, broadcasting, a Pacific labour scheme and climate.
Pacific Island leaders have made absolutely clear that their number one national security and economic challenge is climate change. And what has Australia under this government given them? They've given them the climate wars. They've given them Mr. Dutton making a joke about water lapping at their doorsteps and Mr. Morrison thumbing his nose at them.
Kim Jong-un says North Korea is speeding up development of its nuclear weapons. The leader made the announcement during a parade featuring recently tested ballistic missiles. United States and South Korean officials say there are now signs of new construction at North Korea's only known nuclear site, which has been officially shuttered since 2018. Elon Musk has struck a deal to buy Twitter, with the social media platform's board agreeing to a nearly $61 billion Australian dollar takeover. Mr. Musk is describing himself as a free speech absolutist and says several changes will be made under his leadership, including content moderation. In sport, Carlos Alcaraz has become the youngest men's tennis player to move into the top 10 Association of Tennis Professionals rankings since Rafael Nadal. The Spaniard is now ranked number 9, just a little over a month shy of his 19th birthday. Alcaraz's win at the Barcelona Open saw him move up 2 spots. He beat fellow Spanish player Pablo Carreno Busta 6-3, 6-2 in the final. You've been listening to SBS News in Easy English. I'm Hannah Kwan. Welcome to SBS News in Easy English. I'm Hannah Kwan. The coalition is being accused of mixed messaging after Nationals Senator Matt Canavan said the target of net zero emissions by the year 2050 was dead. Prime Minister Scott Morrison says Matt Canavan is wrong and says the policy isn't dividing the party.
Oh, everybody knows that Matt hasn't been supportive of that position. There's no news there. And as many have said today, as the Treasurer said today, that's not his party's position, that's not the coalition's position, and it's not the government's position.
Meanwhile, the coalition says Labor will introduce a carbon tax if it wins the next election. But the opposition says it's using the same safeguards put in place under Tony Abbott in 2013. The Prime Minister has called this a sneaky carbon tax. Labor spokesperson Jason Clare says the attacks show the coalition is desperate.
This is the government's policy, set up by Tony Abbott, implemented by Scott Morrison, same companies under us as under them. Most of them are represented by the Business Council of Australia, and the Business Council of Australia, Sarah, have given us recommendations how to make it work better, and we're going to do just that.
About 40 teachers have walked out of classrooms at Marsden High School in Sydney in protest. It came just before a visit from New South Wales Premier Dominic Perrottet to mark the first day back of the new term. The New South Wales Teachers Federation State Council is allowing members to walk off a school site if any government MP walks onto it. Mr. Perrottet says the move is irresponsible.
This is the Labor Party and the union movement are playing politics with our kids and our parents. And I have made it clear, very clear, couldn't have made it clearer, that we're working through those issues with the unions right across the board. I've met with the Education Minister and the head of the Teachers Federation. We are going through those issues in a structured way to have a result that is fair and reasonable.
Australia is sending 6 long-ranged weapons called howitzers to Ukraine that are worth over $26 million. It comes as the Russian military is stepping up its offensive in the Donbass region. A former Twitter manager says they are concerned by billionaire Elon Musk's plans to ease the content regulations on his newly purchased social media platform. Mr. Musk has promised to make Twitter better than ever as a haven of free speech after his takeover bid of 61 billion Australian dollars. Leslie Miley, who used to work on safety, security and online abuse at Twitter before leaving in 2015, says Elon Musk's pitch will allow people to spread hate speech without accountability.
And it's dangerous. And it's the same type of danger we saw with other high-profile people on the platform who, when they would tweet out their displeasure, people would get threats against their lives, their families, their properties. And someone who has shown that they don't fundamentally understand that by tweeting that it's worrisome.
In sport, Melbourne coach Simon Goodwin has tested positive for COVID-19 and will not lead the Demons in their Round 7 AFL game. Senior assistant Adam Udzer will instead coach the reigning premiers in this weekend's clash with Hawthorn. I'm Hannah Kwan. This is SBS News in Easy English.
Welcome to SBS News in Easy English. I'm Gareth Borum. To the election campaign, and Shadow Federal Treasurer Jim Chalmers has criticised the Prime Minister's response to the cost of living crisis. He says Scott Morrison takes credit for everything that goes well, but never takes responsibility when times are tough. Mr Chalmers has warned that things will get harder for Australians if the government is re-elected.
It's not good economic management if Australians can't get ahead. It's not good economic management if Australians are falling further and further behind. Now, the thanks that Australians get for the sacrifices they've made for each other can't be another 3 years of falling real wages, skyrocketing inflation and interest rate rises.
But Mr Morrison says his government has provided what he calls a shield for people against the rising cost of living. He's referring to the one-off $250 cost of living payment that went out to people on fixed income support payments and pensioners today. Mr Morrison says the measures are temporary, including the cut to the fuel excise.
What we were seeking to do in the budget was put a shield up for Australians against those higher world oil prices. Now, they won't be permanent. And one of the hallmarks of our economic response in this pandemic is we've always designed it carefully. It's been temporary in many occasions. It's been targeted. It's been done in a way that you can be confident that it'll turn up.
The federal opposition says childcare will be cheaper and more accessible under a Labor government. Labor MP Amanda Rishworth says making childcare cheaper will provide a real and immediate cost of living relief.
What Labor's childcare policy does is deliver a double dividend. Of course, families are being smashed with the cost of living, with childcare out-of-pocket costs up 4.2% this year. So families are struggling with having to find more and more money to pay for the cost of childcare. Labor's childcare policy will reduce those cost pressures on families, saving an average family $1,600 a year.
And she says it will allow more skilled workers to return to the workforce. New South Wales police are investigating a suspected gangland killing in Sydney's southwest last night. Media outlets have named the victim as underworld figure Mahmoud Ahmad, though officials have not formally identified him. He's the brother of killed underworld figure Waleed Ahmad, who was shot in 2016 at Bankstown Shopping Mall. Residents in the suburb of Greenacre heard loud bangs before finding cars on fire. Yatin Shay says he immediately called emergency services.
Yeah, I was just watching my TV and heard some loud bangs, and first I thought it could be maybe someone banging the door, but it just happened a bit repeatedly. I just rushed out and saw the big flames and saw the car is on fire, and I straight away called 000.
The shooter remains on the run. To sport, and in rugby union, Wallabies player Lachlan Swinton says he feels the team is well prepared to face off against England's team in a 3-test showdown set for July. The schedule has been released, with the Sydney Cricket Ground set to host the third and potentially deciding match on July the 16th. It will be the first test at the venue since 1986. Former Wallabies boss Eddie Jones, now the coach of the England team, has beaten Australia 7 times in a row since 2016. Swinton says the team is ready to turn things around.
I just feel like we've got that campaign last year. We were building nicely. We've had a similar sort of squad with Dave Rennie and that coaching staff in for a while now. He's been cementing the same sort of patterns and sort of plays. They're a world-class team, and throughout the whole squad they've got some good depth. But yeah, matching up against our squad, I'm pretty confident that we can put a good performance in.
I'm Gareth Boreham. This is SBS News in Easy English. Welcome to SBS News in Easy English. I'm Gareth Boreham. Anthony Albanese is on his way to Perth for Labor's Sunday campaign launch after being in isolation with COVID-19 for a week. The opposition leader was criticised for not doing a press conference on his return to the campaign trail, instead leaving Shadow Treasurer Jim Chalmers and Shadow Home Affairs Minister Christina Keneally to face reporters. Mr Albanese says he's heeding advice from doctors to rest.
It's great to be out and about, and I'm looking forward to travelling to Perth, to engaging with Western Australians. What it's shown is the strength of Labor's team. I have a magnificent team that I lead. We're ready for government.
Deputy Labor leader Richard Marles has now tested positive for COVID-19 and will be in isolation for the next week. The federal government says Australia's rising cost of living can be attributed to international factors. It's a key issue in the election campaign, with figures released by the energy market operator today indicating the East Coast is being hit especially hard. Finance Minister Simon Birmingham told the Seven Network Europe's energy crisis is to blame.
What we've managed to do is implement effective policies that have seen over the last couple of years household retail energy prices fall by about 8%. We're going to make sure we maintain those policies.
Liberal candidate Catherine Deves says despite recent controversy, she will not quit her campaign for the seat of Warringah. The coalition candidate chosen by Prime Minister Scott Morrison has been criticised for now deleted comments on social media about transgender women in sports. Ms Deves has since apologised for the statements and in an interview on Sydney radio station 2GB insisted she was not transphobic.
This isn't about that, this argument. It is about women and girls. Back in the early 90s, I was going to Mardi Gras. I voted for same-sex marriage. I don't have an issue with that. But this is about a collision of rights. And as I keep saying, we just need to be able to debate it in a respectful way and take into consideration the points of view from all the stakeholders.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelinsky says Russia must be held accountable for the latest missile strikes in Kiev. Deadly attacks have been reported in the Ukrainian capital, with at least one person dead and 10 injured. One of the missiles hit the lower levels of a 25-storey residential building. The blasts came barely an hour after a joint press conference with Mr. Zelensky and United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, who is visiting Ukraine. Mr. Zelensky says the attacks highlight Russia's contempt.
Today, right after our talks in Kiev, Russian missiles flew to the city, 5 missiles. This says a lot about Russia's true attitude towards global institutions, about attempts of Russian authorities to humiliate the UN and everything that the organisation represents. Therefore, it requires a corresponding powerful reaction.
To sport now, and Spain has been disqualified from the 2023 Rugby World Cup in France. The disqualification comes after player Gavin Vandenberg, who was born in South Africa, did not meet passport eligibility requirements. The Spanish Federation and World Rugby acted when it was revealed the prop was fielded in 2 matches during the 2021-22 Rugby Europe Championship, despite being ineligible. It was supposed to be Spain's first qualification for a Rugby World Cup in 24 years. But the decision means automatic qualification for Romania and a place for Portugal in the playoffs. I'm Gareth Boreham. This is SBS News in Easy English.